Once again, welcome you to this episode of the She World series, where we talk about or we identify and celebrate women that are top performers in the workspace, in the corporate world. People who are setting records and transforming the society. People who are in impacting in a very big way, not just for women, but in the society at large. But being International Women's Day today, we are at the MTN Foundation and we're having an exclusive interview with the CEO of the MTN Foundation, Mrs. Ọdunayọ Sanya. She's our guest today. Join me as we welcome her to the She World series. Good day, ma'am. How are you doing?
Very well, and thank you for having me.
Great. Thank you for being here, and more importantly, thank you for what you do.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for being a good example that we could say, let's go learn from her. Let's see what she's doing. And talking about examples, it will be good for us to know a bit more about you, Mrs. Ọdunayọ Sanya, the woman who heads MTN Foundation, has made life very easy for many people, brought solutions to homes. Who is this solution provider?
Hmm. Well, so this is where I talk about myself, right?
Yes, that's it.
Yes, I'm Ọdunayọ Sanya. I have a career spanning about almost 30 years. I've been a banker 3 times over, and funny enough, I've been in MTN. I'll be 20 years in MTN in April.
Okay.
So I crossed over into MTN. Before then, of course, I'm the second of 7 children. Very close-knit family.
Okay.
I schooled across Nigeria. My parents believed so much in the vision of one Nigeria, and so nowhere was too far to go to school. And so schooled in Nigeria, got to experience, and know a bit more about different people, from different backgrounds. Yeah. And I schooled in Nigeria. I'm a pure Nigerian breed.
You're product of Nigeria.
Yeah.
Proud one of that.
Yeah. Attended the University of Abuja, where we actually were the very first set of the school. Okay. I was hoping to go into one of the big schools, and then my dad sees this advert in the newspapers for a new university and says, Ọdunayọ, let's fill it, and the rest that they say is history. Okay. Yeah, so I think that's a bit about me. I'm married, gratefully and happily so married to my friend, and I have 3 daughters.
Oh, great, fantastic. So, in this, looking at your career, from banking to telecom, to the telecom industrial sector, how has it been? What was the first job you did, for example? Can you remember?
Yes, of course. I studied political science, and when I finished school, I was one of those who decided to go and serve wherever I was posted to.
Okay.
And when I got my posting, I thought,
why did you decide?
Yes, why did I decide to go? But nevertheless, I went on the journey. I served in Cross River State.
Okay.
Some village called Ukpa, in case somebody from there is listening. And I've been back there once actually with my husband. And then came back home, and I told myself I would rest for a few months. And then when I started job hunting, yeah, I could have gone back to school, but I felt it was important for me to work.
Okay.
When I started job hunting, the only place I got access to was the banks. And I was really scared because I'm not an accountant. I don't really know what goes on there. But like they say also, that's history. My first job was at Chartered Bank. That was I resumed.
Standard Chartered?
No, Chartered Bank. There used to be a bank called Chartered
Back
Bank.
in the day.
Beautiful, a bank in a class of its own.
Okay.
And now the consolidation saw Chartered Bank become part of the Stanbic group.
Right?
Yeah, and so I started my job. I think I resumed just a day after New Year that year, and yeah, and going in, I knew I had to learn, but I to a large extent, approached life with a very open mind. And so I went in, and I was a bank teller for
the very beginning.
I think about 3 months, and then I went for this long course, and I came back, and my head of operations said, "You couldn't have gone on that course and you come back into the into the till." That, and then I, from then on went into customer service, went into funds processing, back office, marketing, treasury, credit, and
You're
all of that.
working bank yourself.
Not
You've been in
exactly,
almost
but
all the major departments, one would say.
but yeah. So that's been it.
Okay.
And then moved to 2 more banks before I left banking totally.
Right. But when you look at your career, can you identify some major hiccups that you will never forget in life, or some things, events that happened? I thought, man, at this point, these were great challenges.
Yes, and I remember, you know, there's an example I always like to use. I've had to, and this been in MTN, because I joining MTN, I haven't always been in the foundation. I only moved into the foundation about 5 years ago, 4 years ago, thereabout, and done a lot of commercial, been on the commercial side of the business. And I recall there was a project, we had to outsource our call centers. We had the largest call center in Africa, I must say, with about 4,000 agents and all of that. And we walked a path we'd never walked before. But the interesting thing about working in MTN is that you have an enabling environment. I must give that to not because I work here. Even if I stop working here, I would still say the same thing. The environment allows you to grow. The environment allows you to be yourself. And the environment wants you to, the organization wants you to progress beyond your role. Even if you don't move to the next level, what more are you doing? And so, having the resources to carry out that project was a huge project for even MTN, and it was tough. I recall sitting at the first project meeting, and someone tells me, "You know what? We've tried it 3 times before. It's not going to work."
Oh, really? So don't even bother.
Yes, and it'll roll back and all of that, and something welled up within me, and I say, "This is different. This is gonna work." And yeah, it was done. It was done, and that's not to say it's been easy all the time. It hasn't been. There are times it's been a struggle. There are times it's been about taking on more responsibility. There are times it's been about disciplining yourself to deliver on your dreams, your visions, your aspirations. And I think even my journey to the foundation was something that it was a decision I made. And even though I work, it's MTN, but I don't work in telecoms anymore. I'm fully So and that happens. I think I'm one of the privileged few that get to have that experience. And so it's, for me, it's been a lot around understanding where you're going, even if you don't have a full, clear picture of it, and using that as a filter through life to know and assess at every point in time whether what you're doing moves you closer to who you want to be or moves you farther from who you want to be. So yeah, there have been challenges, but I think also, if you let me say this, I do appreciate my parents, because training us, we're 7, so 5 girls and 2 boys. My parents trained us through the lens of, you're a child and you're a human being. Gender was never an issue for us. So I grew up, howbeit I'm a woman by physiology, but that never features in my thought process.
There's no mental limitation.
No. So it was about, what, you can do it. You're first a human being, and you have a right to aspire. You have a right to compete. You have a right to, you're human. So do it. And that, I must say, has helped me.
Okay. All right. But when you look at your successes so far, would you say in any way being a woman aided or limited you in any way? Maybe, you look back and feel like, if I wasn't a woman at this stage, I mean, other guys who were less qualified had better advantages, or they took me here because I was a woman and it worked better for me. Has that featured?
No. And I'll tell you why. Primarily because of my state of mind.
Okay.
So, and the truth is, I tell my daughters, I have only daughters, good enough, and I love that. But I tell them, it's about you. So I tell them, I say, you're a human being, and nobody can take up more oxygen than you can. We all have the same rights to the same things. And so that mentality helped me. It helped me because I walk into a room, I don't see myself as a woman, I just see myself as a human being who has come here to add value. Now, unfortunately, other people might see me as a woman, but that's to their own to their own detriment. So I go in there, do what I need to do, and move on. So I wouldn't say, I've never been in a situation where I would say I didn't get something because I'm a woman. Because there's something I also do. People talk about feedback, but that's when people give you feedback. But when you give yourself feedback, I call it feed forward. You're feeding yourself forward. So the few times I might have attempted something I didn't get, I come back and I do a proper analysis, and I realize at times it's because I didn't pull my weight enough, and at times it's just because somebody else was better. So I've not been in that position where I've been denied something because I'm a woman, or being given something because
you're a woman.
I am a woman.
Yeah, so you've not fallen into the bracket of the pity party people who feel, because I'm either this sex or this tribe, that's why I'm going there. I mean, you've confronted with all confidence. All right. So when you look at the Nigerian society, for example, would you say the corporate world encourages women participation?
I would say yes. I would say yes. And the reason is, you look at, first of all, from the advertisements that go out, nobody tells you if you're not a man, don't apply.
Okay.
You understand? So that first. So if you meet the criteria, that's it. And I don't also see people saying, if you're a man, don't apply. So yes, from that I would say yes. Now the second thing is, using MTN as an example, for instance, we have a policy where women are allowed to go on maternity leave for 6 months.
6 months?
Yes. And that's because the organization places a premium on everybody's productivity and understands that it's more around equity rather than equality. And when I say equity, it's about giving each one, onto each one what each one needs. And so you go on your maternity leave, and you can come back, into the organization, because you're not resigning anyway. We have a creche where people can bring their children, to work, and then you can sit at your desk and you are comfortable. And I must say that, and I know a lot more organizations that do that. And it's because they realize that for them to get, the optimal output from their workforce, they then need to, look, like I said, for each one according to what each one, needs. And so I think that the corporate world is fair. Now, where you can challenge what I've said comes back to individuals.
Okay.
You understand? Some
Right.
people I've had in the past, someone say, I don't want to work with women. They will go on maternity leave.
Yes, I was coming
But
to
there's
that.
nothing. The organization has done what the organization needs to do.
Okay.
But it is about the people and how they now have to understand that, look, we're not the same in terms of our physiology.
Yeah.
A woman needs, there's certain milestones a woman will meet or is expected to, hit. And so it boils down to us as individuals. How we, there's this popular saying that the illiterate of the 21st century is the person that cannot unlearn, that cannot unlearn, relearn, that cannot learn, I think, unlearn and then relearn. Yeah. And so how do we re-educate ourselves? How do we constantly look at adding value? Because if we're adding value, then we don't diminish people.
Yeah.
Instead, we increase them. And so that comes back to individuals, within different teams and all of that.
Right.
So I believe that, and we've seen a wave, and I'm happy that it's not just a wave. It's a wave based on merit, where you see a lot of women also assuming, CEO roles in Nigeria today. And research will tell you that when you have a woman on your board, you have a woman in your leadership team, you balance it, not just having women, but there's male, there's female. You get more balanced perspectives, especially even for people who deal in products.
Okay.
You have balanced perspectives in coming out with a product that works for everybody. So there are advantages to it, and like I said, I'm particularly proud of women that have recently. I think it's happened a number of times in the banking sector, where
we're leading.
and very very qualified women. You can't look and say they weren't qualified or they were put there because they were women.
It wasn't out of inclusivity.
No,
it was merit.
No.
And for those men or organizations who will tell you they have genuine concerns that I would like to work with a woman, but they have to be off at some time of the month, depending on the woman. They have to go on maternity leave. Women will care more about their kids than their husband. My kids are in school, I have to do all that. And because of those concerns, they're not willing to engage women, in spite of the fact that the woman at that particular time has a solution to their problems. What message do you have for them?
Well, I think those are the illiterates of the 21st century that we're talking about. And I think for me, it's not a competition. I tell people I'm not a female, I'm not a gender activist, but it's not about equality, it's about equity. And what I'll tell such a man, for instance, is that it's not a competition, it's a co-opetition. We are cooperating. It's not, no woman wants to be a man, and I don't think vice versa we want to switch our roles. But I think it is about understanding that every other person equally has a voice. Every other person is entitled to their opinion. Every other person should have a seat at the table. When you don't offer that, and you lose out, the person in question moves elsewhere. And like I tell a lot of people, not just women, and to any woman that's listening, I'm saying it. When you don't get offered a seat at the table, let's create our own table. And then we'll be the ones trying to. It's not going to be easy. But let's create our table, and we'll give other people seats there.
That's it.
Or we'll bring. If you don't offer me a seat at the table, I'll bring my seat to the table. So I just think that it's this 2025. There's certain things like that culture and maybe at times our religion plays their role. Those two things have very strong roles to play in
the lifestyle of
upbringing and all of that. But we have to relearn and unlearn. And then I also tell people anyway, I ask the question, and this is to women like me, who really is raising the men?
Yeah.
So it kind of comes back to us, to say we have a role to play, and the men and the women too. It's not for a woman to see a man as a competition, as your competition. No, you are your own competition. You know, so there's a lot that has to be done, and I dare say everything really begins from home, from the family,
the home front.
Yeah.
So generally, I mean, you say you've never been made to feel less, that okay, I need to compete or prove myself. You've been fortunate, one of the few that have been fortunate enough to have been confronted with gender biases in your place of work over the years.
So maybe also because, like I told you, my mentality is you can't treat me as I come in, I'm a human being first of all, and we can talk gender later. So I think it's also how we present ourselves. If I'm in a room and I believe my voice should be heard, then my voice must be heard. You understand? And it's not a forceful thing. It's not it's not based on aggression. It's just that's who I think, who I believe I am. I have value. I'm bringing value to the table, and so this is the value that I bring, to the table. So I think it's also at times, and it does exist. I have people who tell you, oh, they were looked over because they're women. But at times it's also the courage to call that type of behavior out and say no. First of all, treat me as a human being, not because I'm a woman. Yes, there are certain things, like you said, oh, the woman might be off at a point in the month, this and that. It's the way she was created. But this person has value to offer you, and so you take it. So I have a friend who, when I told this, told me, maybe you didn't notice that that's what was done to you.
Exactly. Maybe you looked away, and
maybe I looked away, and I said, this is my target, and this is.
You've been working for how long now?
Almost 30 years.
Almost 30 years, and of course we know that things have changed in recent times. But back then, it was said to be heavy. People soliciting favors for jobs or promotion and all that.
But also because, and I was sharing with my children. I say, you know what, you have to come with something to get a foot in the door.
Okay.
I remember when I left school, I missed a first class degree by 0.13. I will never forget.
Wow.
Not even
Very
up to
painful.
1, extremely painful, and I had the best result in my graduating. Yeah. Oh yes, got the award. And we had to, you do your CV, and I did my CV. But one thing I realized, I'm also a person of faith, and I believe in the God factor strongly. Favor from God and that performance. People wanted to meet with me.
Okay.
And so I would drop my CV, even in places I didn't know anybody. And the next, I'm getting a call, okay, we need to come and see you. And then it was fun because I was actually seeing the CEOs of the bank. Even though I was nobody.
Okay.
And then I recall my first, the interview that got me my first job in Chartered Bank.
Yeah.
I was waiting at the reception, and the deputy MD came in and said, I'll never forget. And he called my name and said, am I around? So I said, yeah. I was trying to tell him something, but I now needed to clear my throat. And he said, are you nervous? I said, no, I need it. He said, don't be nervous. He said, go into that room knowing fully well that the people that will interview you, maximum when you were in Form 1, they were in Form 5. I'd never met him before in my life. And you see, that speaks to us always taking chances on one another.
Yeah.
Whether you're female, whether you're male, are you willing to take a chance on somebody else? People took chances on me. And that's why you want to interview me today. And I'm making it, a discipline to pay it forward, take chances on people, help people, and all of that. So I think it's a lot more about who we are as human beings. I didn't know him before.
Yes.
But he took that, and that thing has stayed with me for almost 30 years.
To remember the words.
Yes. As I said those words, I can see myself and himself
And
standing at the reception of the bank. So I think it's about being gracious to each other as even human beings, and understanding that everybody brings some form of value. Yeah.
Great, great. Lastly, because we need to let you go back to your busy schedule, there's this popular belief that women leaders are very bossy. Is there any truth attached to that?
So, as with human beings, male leaders too can be bossy. So it depends. It's just about the persona that you're interacting with. I've had male bosses who were not nice to me. I've had female bosses who were not nice. But I've had male bosses who were very nice to me. And I've had female bosses who were also nice to me. I think, permit me to say it, I know you're a man, but like I said, for me, you're just a human being and I'm talking to you. I think it's a lot more around us building, stereotypes before we even meet people. I get mentored by John Maxwell. I'm a member of the Maxwell leadership team. And one of the things he said that I will never forget is when you deal with people, you put trust. You put 100% of trust on the table. And then it's up to that person to increase, to shore up the trust or deplete it. But I think we don't give that chance to a lot of women.
Okay.
I tell you, I've had people who everybody says they're nasty, but I end up getting close to them and seeing the good side of them. I once, had a boss who, I was the head of operations. She was the branch manager of that branch in the bank, and I felt she didn't like me.
Okay.
This was years ago. And she'll be nice to every other person. But when it just comes to me, I will, so it was difficult. But I had to ask myself, what are you doing that is chipping this woman off like an electricity switch? And it was difficult because one of the most difficult things for us to do is to identify and accept that we are the problem. It's always the other person.
The other person, yes.
And I realized, I discovered that, we'd worked together before in Chartered Bank. I went to another bank. I went to Standard Trust and then came back to Prudent Bank. And she was in Prudent Bank. But being away, we'll be in meetings and I would say, that might not work because of this. But I was drawing from my experience.
Yeah.
And so it became like I was challenging her. And then I realized that if only, maybe the meeting is over, I walk up to her to say, I have this experience and this what happened. And I found that it started working. Because there are times I would sell an idea to her. And I don't care if you take the idea. No. Are we moving forward as a collective? I'm good. And that worked. So there are times that when people say, I have this female boss, she doesn't like me. What are you doing? You also cannot be the one in the team that has an excuse all the time. At some point, somebody's going to think you're just a joke. And so we almost travel in. Like I said, the same way you have nasty female bosses, you have very nasty male bosses. The same way you have nice and good and progressive male bosses, you have the same as the same female, bosses. I remember a boss I had, female, and I would tell her when I was going for interviews in other.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's how close
and we'll
you were.
sit together and we'll laugh. Funny enough, we never visited each other at home.
Oh.
It was the office, but we had a good relationship. And at times you tell me, you say, Ọdunayọ, but you're not going to take this offer, but you still go for the interview. I'll say yes. I'm going, and we'll come back, we'll talk, and all of that. So I think it's a lot about us as human beings, putting the trust 100%, like I was saying, and allowing the people, not tagging people or giving them a label, but letting them, build upon, that trust.
Okay. All right. So it's first, like one thing you said that I want to take away is looking inward, looking at yourself to see if you're the challenge. Because rightly so, a lot of guys, maybe the disposition and the lady is there, and the way you're talking, she just pushes back. It would be better, for example, to just meet you and say, "Why don't we try this and that?" That's against you. That really works out. So that's the lesson, at least today. If you haven't learned anything,
there'll be times that you have to push back.
Mm.
So it's not all the
It's
time
not all
you
the
go,
time,
you
right?
you do that. No.
Okay.
But it's just, I don't want to stretch the interview, but that's where emotional intelligence comes in.
Emotional intelligence. EQ, that's one way to go. And we've been having this conversation with Mrs. Ọdunayọ Sanya, the CEO of MTN Foundation, and taking us through the story of our lives. And we're picking lessons, nuggets that we could use to get better, even as we celebrate the International Women's Day. She's a top performer, and she belongs to our She World right here at Lagostalks913 FM. Thank you so much for your time, man.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's how we end the show. Do enjoy the rest of your time on Lagos Talks 913.